I can't test. Can't test. If a courtyard is less than 4 amas, we may not pour water into it on Shabbat unless they made a pit which can hold 2 saw. Below the opening, whether on the outside or on the inside. Except on the outside, we must cover it, whereas on the inside, he may not cover it. But Eliezer ben Yaakov says if a drainage conduit is covered for 4 amas in the public domain, we may pour water into it on Shabbos. But the Chachamim say even if it runs along a roof or a courtyard for 100 amas, they may not pour into the opening of the conduit, but he pours from the roof to roof, and the water descends into the conduit. A courtyard and a colonnade combine to total 4 amas. Similarly, two balconies that are opposite one another, if some of them made a pit while others did not make a pit, those who made a pit are permitted, but those who did not make a pit are prohibited. Hey,
Okay. Um, Called Gagos Ha'ir Rishus Achas. Okay, so if you have to imagine a situation where you've got a very high density city somehow. All these all these roofs are adjoining each other, and perhaps what you'll look at it as maybe a building, with like the buildings that we have here, multi-resident buildings with one flat roof on the top there. And although again, okay, let's go with that. Let's go with imagining it as a high-rise building, or as any two buildings like right next to each other, where you've got a number of dwellings all side by side,
okay.
and they share a roof. So first Tana to speak is Rabbi Meir. Okay, he says that they are all considered as if they're one rishus, which means the implication is that you can carry everywhere within that roof, even though you've got multiple dwellings underneath, and their property line. You might argue, as we'll see, somebody does, that everyone's property goes up to the sky.
Right.
In which case,
Except he's saying, Mayor is saying, as long as one roof is not 10 fucking higher or
right, as
lower.
long as one roof is not 10 tefachim separated from its neighbor. As soon as you've got 10 tefachim separated, now you've got a barrier between them, and now they're two separate rishus. So this is Rabbi Meir's opinion. Chachamim omrim kol echad ve'echad rishus b'fnei atzmo. Now, you basically, if you have a line in between the properties, between the walls there, that goes up through the ceiling and into the sky, and you can't carry between these things in the roof. And as a matter of fact, once you've determined that each little area belongs to the apartment below it, you are not allowed to carry anything up there, because now because there's no separation. You won't know where you're carrying when you're carrying from one Rosh Hashanah into another. Okay, בפני עצמו. Rabbi Shimon אומר, echad gagos ve'echad chatzeros ve'echad kapefios. He says, he takes the most lenient position over here. He says it doesn't matter. You could be talking about roofs, you could be talking about courtyards, or you talk karpev as a wood store. Rishus achas lekelim sheshavsu lesochan. They are one rishus for all the kalim that were left in them before Shabbos. Obviously, if you had an erev chatzeros going into it for all of the then you can carry into it as well. But let's say you've got a roof, and you've got something on the roof, right, then if it started on Shabbos, in that roof, and you walk onto that roof, you can pick it up and move it around within the roof, because it's all one rishos for these kalim. However, if they started Shabbos inside the house, you can't take them up into the roof, into that house. So the difference between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Meir is that Rabbi Shimon says that I don't even care if there's a 10 tefachim difference. The roofs are a separate place, and they can carry through all of the
Well,
roofs, as long as you're not passing over Rosh Hashanah or something like that. Okay. Um, and now it actually makes me think. Now I wonder if Rabbi Shimon isn't going even beyond that. That you could that let that the airspace above Rosh Hashanah is not Rosh Hashanah, it's Rosh Hashanah. So maybe he's saying that if you had to jump from roof to roof, you'd be allowed to carry the kalim with you because all of the roofs of the whole city are considered one rishus. And once you're saying I don't care about mechitzas, then perhaps you'll say the same thing about the airspace above the rishus harabim. So I don't know that that's true. Um, and and actually, Kati points out that the halach is like Rabbi Shimon in this case, that
Yeah.
the whole thing is considered one rishus. Yeah, that's it. Okay, Mishnah base. Gag gadol samoch lekatan. I've got a diagram in here. Do you?
I have also a large and then a small. Yeah.
Right. So basically, the whole thing rides on what your perspective is when you look at your setup. For the people in the large roof, they look at the small roof and it looks like there's a doorway. So for them, the separation between the two rishuyos is clearly defined. Okay,
Mhm.
that's nice. It's like you've got a doorway. People sitting inside the small roof, they look out and they see that there's one wall missing from their roof, and it goes straight into somebody else's property. Which means that the gad gadol samuch lekatan hagadol mutar v'hakatan asur. The small one is not, you're not allowed to carry in it because it doesn't have a boundary on it. It's missing a
Oh,
wall, and therefore it's considered as if the other property is kind of spilled into it, and restricts it. Whereas the people in the large one, they can carry within their roof because there's no boundary between them.
yeah, right.
Because there is a boundary between them. Okay. Chatzer gedola. Same thing goes for a large courtyard. Shenifretza lekatana. Hagedola muteres v'katana asura mipnei shehi kapischa shel gedola. So exactly the same thing goes for two courtyards that have no separation in between them. Okay. Exactly the same setup. I don't need to dive too much more into that. Chatzer shenifretza le'rshus harabim. Now, what happens if you've got a courtyard that's broken through into the rishus harabim? So one is the Rishos Yachid, the other is the Rishos Rabim. Hamachnis lesocha lirishos Yachid or merishos Yachid lesocha chayav. So this means that let's just see if this is the one. Yeah. So basically, it's missing the entire fence going into the Rishos Rabim. Now, Rabbi Eliezer takes a very firm view of this. That if you carry something from the Rishus Harabim into the Rishus Yachid or vice versa, you're chayav a korban chatas. Bec- wait, Rishus Yachid me Rishus sorry, hamachnis mitocha le Rishus Yachid from the courtyard even into your house. We're saying if you carry something from his courtyard into his house or from his house into his courtyard, he's chayav a korban chatas because he says the break in the absence of the wall makes this courtyard a Rishus Harabim as well because it's not cordoned off.
Right.
So is Rabbi Eliezer. Chachamim omrim mitocha lerishus harabim or mirishus harabim letocha patur. They're saying that you're not allowed to carry between this and the rishus. Now, I don't know why they switched from the rishus yachid from the house to now talking about the yard, but you can infer from what they're saying what they'd say the halacha is. They're saying that from it into the rishus harabim you would be patur. And that itself is a chiddush, which teaches you what they're trying to say. Because if it had been fenced off, the chatzer would also be rishus yachid. So carrying
Mm.
from the chatzer into the rishus harabim would have made you chayav. But now there's no fence, and you're pater, which means what they're saying is that this chatzer has taken on a din of Carmelis.
All right.
Okay? So it's taken on a din of Carmelis, which is what you're inferring, and you can infer from that when they take if he carries from his chatzer back into the house, that's also from Carmelis to Rishus Hayachid, you're also pater. So that's the argument between them
Good
and
then.
Rabbi Lezer. Okay. Oh, Rishus Rabbi. So pater mipnei shehika Carmelis. Oh, you don't even need to infer it. It's explicit. Sorry. Okay. Now, what if it's not the whole wall? It says in Mishnah Gimel, "Chatzer shenifretza lirshus harabim mishtei ruchoseha." So it's broken from two sides. Now, let's just the wording is a little bit confusing. So so the previous Mishnah was talking about where the entire wall is missing. We also know a situation that if there's a small break in the wall going between them, that's just a doorway. So what we're talking about over here is that there's a break in the corner where the two walls of the
Neat.
hut
Right.
meet. Okay, so this is talking about in the corner. Now, this is not a normal place to make a doorway. People don't put gates in the corner of the chatzer. Um, V'chein bayis shenifratz mishtei ruchoseha. And also, the same thing goes for a house that where the corner has been
Right.
destroyed,
Right.
and also in parentheses, there's no roof above them because the roof you could say a good asik that it's that the wall drops.
Yeah.
Okay. V'chein mavoi shenitlu korosav. Same thing goes for the mavoi where the beams or the side what's it the side post were removed. Mutarin ba'osa Shabbos. So if this broke down during Shabbos, says Rabbi Yehuda, you can still carry in them for that Shabbos, v'asurin lasid lavo, but but next Shabbos you have to fix it, otherwise it's going to come into Shabbos with no mechitzas there, and you're not allowed to carry in them. Thus it says Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yossi Omer im mutarin losa Shabbos mutarin lasid lavo, im asurin lasid lavo asurin losa Shabbos. He says you can't be inconsistent. Either it works or it doesn't. You can't have it if
Both
it works
ways.
now, then it must always work, and if it doesn't work, and if it doesn't always work, it doesn't work now either. So basically, um, just to recap, the corner piece everyone agrees is not just a doorway. It's a break, which means
Oh,
that the
well.
separation between the courtyard and the Rosh Hashanah is blurred, and now it becomes basically a Carmelis, unless you're Rabbi Eliezer. So um, so the question that they're talking about is what happens if this happens on Shabbos, and and Rabbi Yehuda is making an argument that look, once you were allowed to carry in it on Shabbos when it started, you're allowed
Right.
to carry on. And Rabbi Yossi is saying you can't do that. That rule of once you brought in Shabbos with it, then it's mutar. That's talking about the foods of an Eruv. Yeah, if you make food for an Eruv and then somebody comes and eats the Eruv food, no, you can carry on carrying inside the courtyard because the courtyard the food for the Eruv was meant to be eaten.
Mhm.
That's the whole point of why the Eruv works is so that
Right.
anyone can come and take food with it. And once you brought in Shabbos with that heter, then it's good. But when the actual walls of the enclosure are broken down, that's no longer valid. And I believe that is the halacha. Yeah, that is the halacha like Rabbi Yossi.
They don't give a minimum shear on how much must be broken down. It's just any kind of a break.
I guess enough that a person
Mm.
could get through,
Right. Mhm. Okay.
which is usually like it's not Daled Amos, it's I'm not actually sure. They didn't say how much the Peretz is correct. Okay.
All right. Vav test. Two courtyards, one behind the other. If the inner made an Erev and the outer did not, the inner is permitted while the outer is prohibited. The outer, but not the inner, both are prohibited. Each courtyard made its own Erev, is individually permitted. Rabbi Akiva permits the outer because the rite of passage restricts it. But the comments say this rite of passage is not restricted. If one resident of the outer forgot to contribute to the Erev, the inner is permitted while the outer is prohibited. If one from the inner forgot, they are both prohibited. If they place the Erev in one place and one resident of either the inner or the outer forgot to contribute to the Erev, both are prohibited. But if they were inhabited by individuals, they need not make an Erev. A window between two courtyards. If it is 4 by 4 within 10, they may make two Erev. Or if they wish, they make one Erev less than 4 by 4 or higher than 10. They may make two Erevim, but may not make one Erev. Okay. Shabbos. Yud Zayin Hey. All utensils which may be taken on the Shabbat, fragments of them may also be taken with them, provided they can still be used to perform some sort of task. For example, fragments of a mixing bowl with which to cover the mouth of a cask, or fragments of a glass with which to cover the mouth of a flask. Rabbi Yehuda says, provided they can still perform in the nature of their former task. For example, fragments of a mixing bowl into which to pour porridge, or fragments of a glass into which to pour oil. A stone that is in a ground gourd shell, if water can be drawn with it without its falling out, we may draw water with it, and if not, we may not draw water with it. A branch that is tied to a pitcher, we may draw water with it on Shabbos. A window shutter says when it is fastened and suspended, we may shut the window with it, and if not, we may not shut the window with it. But the comments say in either case, we may shut the window with it. Marco here.
Next.
Okay. Okay. It's a shame. It's a shame. Olive base. The mice of cattle, when unblemished, may not be sold alive, and when blemished, neither alive nor slaughtered. Nor may one betroth a woman with it. The firstling of when unblemished may be sold alive, and when blemished, both alive and slaughtered. And one may betroth a woman with it. Meister Sheni may not be redeemed with an asamon, or with a coin that is not current, or with money that is not at one's disposal. If one buys cattle for a peace offering, or a non-domestic animal for meat consumption, the hide becomes non-holy, even though the hide exceeds the flesh. Sealed jars of wine in localities where they are sold sealed, the jar becomes non-holy. Nuts and almonds, their shells may not be bought with mice and money. After it has fermented, it may be bought with mice and money. If one buys a non-domestic animal for a peace offering, or a cattle for meat consumption, the hide does not become non-holy, nor sealed jars of wine. Where they are sold open, the jars do not become non-holy, and baskets of olives and baskets of grapes together with the receptacle, the value of the receptacle does not become non-holy. Okay.
Okay.
And Nida. Gimel Dalet. If a woman aborts a sandal or an afterbirth, she must observe the period of Tuma and Tahara of a male and female. If there is an afterbirth in the house is Tameh. Not that the afterbirth itself is a child, rather it is presumed that there is no afterbirth without a child. Reb Shimon says the child disintegrated before it emerged. If a woman aborts a tumtum or an androgen, she observed the periods of Tuma and Tahara for a male and female. If she aborted either a tumtum or a male, and a male, or an androgen and a male, she observes the periods of Tuma and Tahara for a male and female. However, if a woman aborted a tutum and a female, and an androgen and a female, she needs only observe the periods of Tuma and Tahara for a female child. If the fetus emerges dismembered or inverted, when a majority of it emerges, it's considered born. If the fetus emerges in the usual manner, it's considered born when a majority of its head emerges. And what is considered most of its head? When its forehead comes out. If a woman aborts something that is not known what it is, she observes that periods of Tuma and Tahara for a male and female. However, if it is not known whether it was a child or not, she must observe the Tuma laws of a male, a female, and a Nida.
Okay.
Okay. Aleph Zion. If he does not wish to redeem it, he must decapitate it with a large knife from behind and bury it. The precept of redemption takes precedence over the precept of decapitation, as it states, and if you do not redeem it, you shall not decapitate it. The precept of Yud takes precedence over the precept of redemption, as it is stated, he who does not designate her, he shall not cause her to be redeemed. The precept of Yibum take precedence over the precept of Chalitza. In the early days, when they would intend to perform Yibum for the sake of fulfilling the precept, but now they do not intend to perform Yibum for the sake of fulfilling the precept, they said the precept of Chalitza takes precedence over the precept of Yibum. The precept of redemption is on the owner, and he takes precedence over any other person, as it is said, and if it is not redeemed, it shall be sold for its valuation. One who buys the fetus of a cow belonging to a non-Jew, or sells one to him, even though it is not permissible, or enters into a partnership with him, or receives a cow from him to hold, or gives one to him to hold, is exempt from Bakor laws, as it states numbers in Israel, but not in others. Kohanim and Levites are liable, but they were not exempted from the Bakor law of kosher animals. They were exempted only from the redemption of the son and from the law of the firstborn donkey. Well, I think there's one more, right?
Yeah.
Right. All consecrated animals whose permanent blemish receive their consecration and which were redeemed are subject to the laws of Bakor and the gifts to the Kohen, and they revert to mundane status even to the extent that they may be shorn and put to work. Their offspring and the milk are permissible after their redemption, and one who slaughters them outside the temple courtyard is not liable. But they do not affect Tamora, and if they died prior to their redemption, they may be redeemed except for the Bakor and the Misa offering. Okay. And Sota. Okay. Test Bub, taste base. It was found buried in a heap, or hanging from a tree, or floating upon the water. They would not decapitate a calf, as it said, in the land, implying that it was not buried in a heap fallen, but not hanging from a tree or in the field, but not floating upon the water. If it was found near the border or near a city of which the majority of non-Jews, or near a city in which there is no court of law, they would not decapitate a calf. They would not measure except from a city in which there is a court of law. If it was found equidistant from two cities, the two bring calves. These are the words of Rebbe Eliezer, and Yerushalayim is exempt from the right of decapitated calf. If its head was found in one place and its body in another, we bring the head to the body. These are the words of Rebbe Eliezer. Rebbe Kiva says the body is brought to the head. From where would they measure? Rebbe Eliezer says from his navel. Rebbe Kiva says from his nose. Rebbe Eliezer ben Yaakov says from the place where they became a corpse, his neck. Okay.
That's it.
One more. One. That's it. Okay.
Yeah. Have a wonderful
Terrific.
Shabbos.
Great. Have a great, enjoy Shabbos. Keep cool. Right. If you go to the early Shabbos, then you won't have to worry about the heat. They have early Shabbos still?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, they do? Okay. All right.